So there was a time when I interacted with someone who felt like she didn't have a purpose. That's because she thought that purpose has to be this super grand, wow thing that attracts a lot of attention. That's simply not true. Purpose doesn't always have to be grand. It can also be small acts of love, obedience, and faith. In this week's Bible Nuggets, we're going to be diving deep into what purpose is, what it looks like, the type of purposes that we have, and how to discover our purposes. Hello and welcome back to a new week of Bible Nuggets. If you're new here, my name is Rutendo, and here Towards Jesus with Rutendo, we're on a mission to be with Jesus, to become like Jesus, and to do what Jesus did. We do that by spending time with God in His Word, learning from Him, and after having learned from Him, we apply what we've learned not only to our personal lives, but also into the places and spaces that God has put us in society. So if that's something that you're interested in, be sure to subscribe. I'd love to have you be a part of the community. Okay, let's get into the nuggets of the week. So the Oxford Dictionary defines purpose as the reason for which something is created or the reason why something is done. When we're speaking biblically, purpose refers to the reason why God created the earth, the reason why God created you and I. The first thing that you need to know is that we all have a purpose. This is due to the doctrine of predestination. And the doctrine of predestination, in simple terms, is basically saying that God knew everything beforehand. God has said things ahead of time. He has planned them ahead of time, even before our existence. To give you more context, let's have a look at Jeremiah 1 verses 4 to 5. So in this verse, Jeremiah is basically telling us about what God said to him, and this is what he says. The word of the Lord came to me, saying, Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. So here we can see that even before Jeremiah was born, God had a predestined plan and purpose for his life. And just like God had a plan for Jeremiah and Jeremiah's life, He also has a plan and a purpose for you and I. Now that we know that, let's turn our attention to the types of purpose. So the first type of purpose is general purpose. When we're speaking about general purpose, it's a purpose that God intends for all of us to have as a humankind, as a human race, male, female, children, all of us. And we can learn about this in Genesis 1 verse 26 and verses 28. Let's quickly read it. So Genesis 1 verse 26 says, Then God said, Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. Verse 28 says, God blessed them and said to them, Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. So here we can see that God created us with the general purpose of doing three things: to rule over the earth, to fill it by multiplying, and to subdue it. That, in simple terms, it's basically saying that God has created us with a general purpose of stewarding the earth. So what does stewarding the earth look like in 2026? Well, stewarding the earth in 2026 can look like recycling, taking care of the planet, reducing carbon emissions, right? That is ruling the earth and stewarding it well. Now, the second type of purpose is specific purpose. And specific purpose is purpose that is different for each and every individual, because it also depends on our circumstances, our life experiences, the way that we reason. It is based on who we are individually. And when it comes to specific purpose, it can either be big or small. Like, some people can be called to lead many people, like millions of people, by being a president, but another person can be called to just lead one person. However, that doesn't mean that the person who has the purpose to help one person is less important than the one who's meant to lead millions, or that the person whose purpose is to only help one person is different from the one whose purpose is to lead many people. Being a husband can be a purpose, being a wife can be a purpose, being a mother can be a purpose, being a brother can be a purpose, being a sister can be a purpose, being a friend can even be purpose. Why? Because it's you serving others. So purpose doesn't always have to be this grand thing where you need to feel like you need to be doing the most. Being there for a friend is purpose. Being there for your husband, for your wife, for your kids, it's purpose. Even a 9 to 5 can be a purpose. So some people get to know their purpose through revelation, through direct encounters with God, like dreams and visions. And other people come to know their purpose through having an aha moment. An example is Blake McCoskey. Now, this is a man who was an entrepreneur. Fun fact, he was a part of the Amazing Race in 2006, I believe. Yeah. So when Blake McCoskey was on a trip to Argentina, he saw that there was a problem where children were unable to attend school because they didn't have shoes. And that poverty, that lack deeply moved him. After having seen that, he had an aha moment, he had an epiphany. And that's when he founded Tom's, which is a shoe brand that has a business model where for every pair of shoes sold, one pair of shoe is donated to the less fortunate. And that business model was very successful. Millions of shoes have been donated worldwide. I think to date it's about 200 million pairs of shoes that have been donated to less fortunate people and children out there. He started a whole new business model that combines profit and purpose. Now, if you know your purpose, that's great. However, if you're still figuring it out or looking for it, here are 3 purpose assessment questions that I've come up with that you can use to help you figure it out better. The first thing is to ask yourself, does what I'm doing give me a sense of fulfillment? Does it give me joy? You need to remember, the word of God tells us that the blessing of the Lord brings joy. And you need to remember, when God has placed you somewhere and put you somewhere, or when God has allowed you to be in something, you are going to have peace connected to that thing. So you need to ask yourself, is this giving me peace? Is this giving me a sense of joy? Is this giving me a sense of fulfillment? Now remember, that doesn't mean that it has to be 100% perfect. Use the 80-20 rule, which basically says that for anything that you're doing, be it business, be it in relationships, if 80% of what you're doing is good and 20% is blah, not so good, is the bad thing, as long as there's 80% that's giving you joy, that you're fulfilled with, then that is a good thing, and that is probably purposeful, and that is something that God is allowing you to be in, right? The second question you need to ask yourself is, does this thing serve others? You need to remember, purpose is not about me, myself, and I. It's not just about you alone and the world revolving around you. Purpose always serves other people. It always serves another person. It has to be serving at least one person for us to group it as a purpose or something purposeful. So if your answer is yes, it does serve someone else, it does serve other people, then that is purpose. The third question that you can ask yourself, this one is following up from the second question. If the answer is no, the thing that I'm doing does not serve other people, or I don't feel like it's purposeful, then just ask yourself, what can I do to make this thing purposeful? What can I do to make it serve others? For example, if you're just a normal everyday person and you just have a normal 9 to 5, it might not be purposeful right now, but you can be creative about it. Maybe you can say, okay, I'm gonna take 1%, 2%, depending on how much you get paid, a small percentage of my salary, and I'm going to use that to contribute to charities. I'm going to use that to feed people that are hungry. You see, you're turning something that may not seem like it has a purpose, that may not feel fulfilling, that may not feel purposeful, you are turning it into something that is purposeful. Even if you don't have money to be contributing, you don't always have to be contributing money or business ideas or like doing extra grand things, depending on what your life circumstances are. You could just contribute your time on a weekend, going to a non-profit organization, participating in things that serve your community, that serve others. So, my prayer for this week is that God gives us the grace and the understanding and the wisdom to know that purpose looks different for everyone. And just because someone is doing something that might seem bigger doesn't mean that your purpose and our purposes are any different. And that He gives us the wisdom and creativity to be able to think outside the box and to be able to come up with ways and see ways that we can be purposeful in our lives that we may not be seeing right now. That is it for me for this week. Do let me know what stood out the most to you about this week's Bible Nuggets. If you have a comment, if you have an opinion, also share that with me in the comment section. I will see you again next week.